Tim called me up, and it was interesting because being an observer and observing myself, I caught myself doing something which was interesting. Is that Tim had been, I'm not going to say the word obsessing, but researching. Heavily. So I'm not going to say the word obsessing. I'm going to say researching. Heavily researching into a theory that came upon him, which was this flat world theory, or flat Earth theory, that the Earth is flat.
Which is a theory.
It's a theory, yeah. And I've got to say this before we get into this, that a theory like that has to be, and it has to have grounds of strength to be a theory, because even the person that comes up with a theory to some degree knows how silly the theory must sound. So so when you look into it, initially my response was to be kind of blasé. Now I had seen something about it before, but when you presented it to me, my immediate response was to shun it down, to knock it down.
Yep.
And in a kind of bizarre way, I observed this, so I'm not my thoughts, but I observed the thought that I actually got a bit aggravated by it. It was almost
how would
like,
Tim be suckered into something like sounding so crazy?
Just maybe that, maybe more. Yeah, probably is that. I mean, it's to some degree. It's like,
I can see why people would think that.
Yeah, it doesn't fit in with my dogma, and so because it doesn't fit in with my dogma, how are you going off on such a tangent?
Especially when we're so similar in our train of thoughts in so many ways.
Yeah.
So I first heard about it in December last year, and of course, it sounded crazy, but certainly one thing I've learned in this life: don't take anything at face value. Like I wouldn't ridicule something just because someone said. I wouldn't laugh and say, of course, that's not true. I'd be like, okay, why do you think that? Like, how could a human on this earth that is clearly we've all been taught from the day we were at school that the earth is round and we laughed at our ancestors. How could someone possibly believe that it's flat? Okay, so what's the evidence? Oh, so it's these simple couple of observations. Oh, the horizon never sinks. There's no even in a plane, the Earth doesn't look like a sphere. Okay, I can see why you think that from those observations. But of course, there's all these other rules and gravity, and the Earth spins around the sun, and all these other things that make it not true, clearly. And then just out of sheer something just piqued my interest in it. I asked a few more questions, and I looked at, okay, it must be easy to disprove. And I looked at the debunking videos. I looked at like Vsauce and people on YouTube, big scientist YouTubers.
Well, I think more importantly is you actually called an old physicist teacher.
Okay, yeah.
And because that's the big one for me.
Well, it led to that. It led me to that because I didn't find enough that disproved it. So I thought, okay, I think I'm quite a mathematical brained guy. I did A-level maths and physics. I got an A in maths. I got into university to do a maths and physics degree, which I then deferred to pursue parkour. But I actually ended up. Yeah, you're right. I called my old physics teacher. Sent him a few links, and then he called me back, and we talked for an hour on the phone. And him being a true scientist, so, science is constantly growing and learning, and science should stand up to its own questioning. And he at that point wasn't convinced either way. He wasn't agreeing.
So he was neutral.
He was neutral, and he wasn't. He was saying, these are interesting theories. They've got to be evaluated something further. Let's see, why does the horizon always stay at eye line? And so then I ended up driving back to Derby and sitting in a pub with him in a corner with a laptop and internet for 2.5 hours, recorded the conversation, although it was a lot of stop-start because we were watching videos, so it's not the most interesting conversation to listen to. But we had a great chat, and we delved further into it, and since we've had a few more emails back and forth, and from the point when I'm talking to a physics teacher, and it's not as crazy as your first glance might sound.
And I think even saying this, right? I think this is the point, and this is where my mind got the better of me, is that, and I think probably people listening right now are probably like, what are they talking about? I think the first point is I don't know much about this. I haven't done any research into it. I've done very little research into it, and I don't know. But what I do know is that perspectives are the key to educating yourself. And what we seem to do is we seem to block people's perspectives if they don't tie up with what we think about life. And what I caught myself doing, which I really think was an important part of kind of my journey, was that I got offended by something that's really quite innocent. It's you just investigating and looking into...
I was a kid, I saw something and wanted to question it, that was it.
Yeah. And my ego went immediately, that is so stupid. How can you be looking and wasting your time in looking at something that we know 500 years ago wasn't the case? And so anyway, so from that, to then actually sitting with you and discussing. Now, as I said before, like I haven't seen the other side, and everything can be presented in a way that is plausible to some degree.
Well, I mean, this shouldn't be. This should be easy to disprove, and yet somehow
no, because it wouldn't be a theory. Because the truth is, it's so out there, and it's so beyond our comprehension that the theory has to be strong for it to be something that's presentable.
To have got this far, and so basically, in the mainstream media recently, B.O.B. was tweeting.
But that doesn't mean it's true.
I'm not saying it does. I'm saying, but it doesn't mean it's true. But B.O.B. was tweeting, and Neil deGrasse Tyson were going back and forth about it. And I saw the ridicule that B.O.B. were getting. That people on my timeline, Twitter timeline, were ridiculing him and laughing at him and saying, "Did he not go to school and all this stuff? Like school gives you the truth. Like that makes it definitive because they went to school and learned."
But but you also know the mind that says that. You get.
I know, but what fascinates me was when I just said, let people believe what they want. If that's what he's looked into, that's fine. And we think otherwise. I got a backlash, and that made it more fascinating.
But you almost got it from me.
Well, yeah, and that's what. Do you know what? That's what pushed me in the direction because what are you so sure of yourself, eh? So I'm going to go look into this.
Well, it gives you the drive.
It gave me the drive, and this is one thing. This is an Ali G quote. This is one thing video games taught me is that when you encounter enemies, you go in the right way.
Yeah, and I love that. By the way.
What a genius Ali G was. So from the ridicule I got, I just started to delve into it a bit more, and so I ended up there. But the point being is that all I know in this life, I learned from Buddhism, is ultimate truth has to be experienced. Now, even experience, can be swayed, and you can take different perspectives on things.
Of course.
But my experience on the earth, if I ignore that I went to school and I was planted here, and I was interested in, I wonder what this earth is like that we're on. What are the tests that I would do just to be so I can experience whether it's flat or round or whatever. Yeah. So I just got excited like a kid again. But what upsets me is how quickly people are to laugh and ridicule and be sure. Like, can't I just be interested and intrigued by something like without taking that backlash? But I think the vegan thing certainly.
But that's really similar. It to some degree.
The ridicule vegans get, and certainly it's getting less and less. People are certainly starting to accept now that you should eat less meat, if not no meat whatsoever. Like that's that. No one is. I feel like. Obviously, I may be biased being a vegan, but vegans are pretty much right about that. Like plant-based diet is that if you look into environmental reasons, it's the most environmental diet you can live.
Well, I think
it's certainly one of the healthiest
again, diets. It's not what you think; it's how it's being presented. Because the thing with the human ego is that if you present it in a certain way where you tell somebody it's right, someone that's not on that journey is going to immediately go, "Who are you to say that it's right?" and immediately get defensive. And so you have to be really careful in how we present. And I always said, it's things like yeah, but, and no, no, no. If someone says something to you and I go, yeah, but, that's an immediate disconnection. And the nature of all of this in terms of perspectives and us all formulating ideas is to connect and to journey together. And if you look at some of the structures within our society, like politics, for example, it's all about challenging and disagreeing and debating, but debating with almost like an aggressive edge, with you're wrong, and I think that the minute we disconnect, I think you can see it, and I think we have to kind of stay away from going too much into kind of neuroscience. But there is a point where when you get attacked, I do feel like my short-term memory goes. Bleh. I can't remember facts. I get a bit flustered, and I end up losing myself a little bit to the emotions. So the nature of this is that we should connect with each other, and if we can connect with each other using language in a way that is presentable, so we're not. So if you give me a perspective like the flat world theory, which I would presume that the Earth's sphere.
No, I'm not saying it's flat here because and this is one of the main things that I got ridiculed on. I was just defending people's right to think about it,
and that's the point.
And that's what I was doing. And the fact that I got so much ridicule from that, people were attacking me as though I was saying this is what it was. I was just saying that let people think that and look into that. Yeah, and it pushed me to look.
But then that's the same thing with the vegan thing is that you get a lot of vegan activists who are aggressive in their approach. And what I realized from being a non-vegan for so many years and then becoming vegan was that I wasn't somebody that should have been attacked for what I was doing. It was the fact that I didn't know what I was doing. I hadn't necessarily thought about it or given it the thought that somebody else had. And so in that, the approach is the key. And that's where I think language needs to serve us a little bit better. We've got to really look at what it is that's disconnecting us, how our approach and how we approach things, because we know that there are people out there that are susceptible to getting aggressive in terms of new belief systems that don't fit in with their own. And so how do you present something in a way that people can swallow it and digest it? without getting offended. When it's
comedy.
Comedy is the best.
But we're not comedians. That makes it a bit harder.
Well, let's be funnier.
But we can